A very good morning. Akashvani Hyderabad, in collaboration with Center for Women's Studies, University of Hyderabad welcomes you to a very special symposium on women empowerment. We are celebrating India's G20 presidency this year, and under its aegis, G20 Empower is an alliance for the empowerment and progression of women's economic representation, and the aim is accelerating women's leadership and empowerment in the private sector. I would like to invite our guests on the dais, on the podium and dais, please. Srimati Budugula Sumati, IPS, CID Women's Wing, and Dr. Shanta Tautam. Okay, sure. Okay. Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad. Professor Jyotirmay Sharma, Dean, School of Social Sciences, University of Hyderabad. Srimati Budugula Sumati, IPS, Deputy Inspector General of Police, CID Women's Safety. Professor K. Sunita Rani, Head, Center for Women's Studies, University of Hyderabad. Ms. Ekta Behel, Lawyer, Samvad Partners. Ms. Vijanti Vasanta Mogli, RTI and Transgender Activist. Srimati Narsamma, Manager, Sangam Community Radio, Zahirabad. I would like to invite Professor K. Sunita Rani to welcome our guests and give a brief introduction of the event.
Our chief guest, Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad. Dean, School of Social Sciences, Professor Jyotirmay Sharma. Head of Programs, Shri Uday Shankar from Akashvani, Hyderabad. And our invited speakers, Srimati Badugula Sumati, IPS. Dr. Shanta Tautam, Chief Innovation Officer, Telangana State. Ms. Ekta Behel, Lawyer from Samvad Partners. Ms. Vijanti Vasanta Mogili, RTI and Transgender Activist. Srimati Narsamma, Manager, Sangam Community Radio, Zahirabad. Our students, colleagues, and staff from Akashvani. A very warm welcome to all of you. And it's my pleasure to propose welcome to this very, very important, significant program here. And we cherish this collaboration with Akashvani, Hyderabad. Center for Women's Studies, University of Hyderabad has always looked forward to collaborations which are fruitful, which are significant, where we can contribute a bit with our knowledge systems as well that are part of women's studies and gender studies and feminist studies. As we're all aware, G20 it's a premier forum for international economic cooperation, and India is very soon going to convene the G20 Leaders Summit in India very soon, the next month. And one of the priorities of G20, which is very, very relevant to us as women's studies, as women activists and scholars, is the emphasis on women-led development. I think that is what we come across here in the range of speakers that we have on the days. It is not just development of women, it's not just empowerment of women, but women empowerers, women-led development, women-led empowerment that is very significant for us. And the emphasis of G20 on inclusive growth and development with a focus on women empowerment and representation in order to boost socio-economic development and the achievement of sustainable development goals. The dictionary meaning of empowerment is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. That is what we have been emphasizing, and the speakers here, and I'm sure the audience here, have been doing this every day in their lives, in their writings, in their work. That is decision-making power, autonomy over one's equality, one's body, mind, and life, being able to live with equality, dignity, and self-respect, being to transgress the limiting borders and boundaries. This is our understanding of empowerment, which is not just about us as individuals, but about others as well. And this gives us, Center for Women's Studies, one more occasion and opportunity to remember all the inspiring women from diverse fields who faced umpteen number of hurdles, yet continued to fight their battles against restrictions and repressions. I cannot but think of a pioneer like Savitribai Phule. Thanks to her efforts, so many women are in this auditorium or in these crucial positions where not just learn but also teach, share, empower ourselves and others. Some of these women, empowering women, remained in history, on the pages of history, and some others were invisibilized and muted. Some were successful in achieving their goals, and some were not. But they all taught us determination, perseverance, and most importantly, gave the message that change is possible. Empowerment is possible, that empowerment is not given, but empowerment is taken, empowerment is achieved. They did not talk about empowerment, nor did they theorize empowerment as a concept, but their writings, their lives, and their activism led us and the policymakers to comprehend the complexity of inequality and the constitutional provisions of liberty, equality, fraternity, and others. Not only did they empower themselves, but inspired others to empower themselves and reach the heights of success and progress. The distinguished speakers in the symposium today, or they hail from different backgrounds, different work fields, but all of them have challenged the hierarchies and hegemonies in their respective work fields and contributed to a constructive change. Not only that they are empowered, but also have been playing an instrumental role in bringing about a change towards empowerment and change, and empowerment of change. I'm certain that their presentations will address the multiple and intersecting dimensions of empowerment of women. The Center for Women's Studies, once again, is very happy to host the deliberations, and I'm very thankful to a space like University of Hyderabad, which has always been a space for thoughts and for discussions, for deliberations, and accommodating different ideologies as well. And particularly, I take this opportunity to thank our Vice Chancellor for giving permission in the last minute. But for that permission, we would not have hosted this program. Thank you so much to everyone here on the days, off the days, and I'm looking forward to the deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I would now like to invite Station Director of Akashvani Hyderabad, Shri Uday Shankar, for the opening remarks.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Respected dignitaries on the stage, dear students in the auditorium, listeners who are listening this live broadcast from the Akashvani stations across Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, Namaste. At the outset, let us all of us congratulate yesterday's Chandrayaan 3. We must congratulate the scientists behind this success, particularly many women scientists in this project. Akashvani is doing many programs celebrating the kind of taking this as a festive occasion, this presidency of G20. Akashvani Hyderabad is also doing many programs, going to the colleges and conducting cultural events involving students and all others. Friends, our life is not unlimited. This is a prepaid service, but we don't know when it expires. It is a secret by God. But we can top up every day by kind of prayer every night. Why I'm telling this, if we can imbibe this kind of spirit in the children by the mother, we can expect a very good next generation. Empowering women. Who will empower? It's not the government, somebody else. It is us, we have to ourselves empower. All the different roles played by women. First comes motherhood. In peace with self. First, you should love yourself. In peace with husband. In peace with children. In peace with in-laws and parents. In peace with neighbors. Normally, we will confine up to this level. Next level is that in peace with the society, in peace with community and state, then in peace with among nation. And for the first time, India is taking a lead role among G20 countries and creating kind of hope for all the countries for a better future for all among us on this earth. One earth, one family, one future. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So on this joyous occasion, let us create a world where every woman's voice, choice, her potential are celebrated and respected. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to invite our chief guest, Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, to address the gathering.
Good morning to all of you. Firstly, welcome to this beautiful campus on this beautiful morning. I want to applaud and welcome all my guests today to this campus. Badugula Sumati Garu, Upasana Kamineni Konidela Garu, Shanta Totam Garu, Ekta Bahal Garu, Vijayanti Vasanta Mogili Garu, Narasimha Garu. And of course, I want to profusely thank Akashvani and Uday Shankar Garu for giving us this beautiful opportunity to join the movement of G20 in the University of Hyderabad on the theme of women empowerment. Nothing could have been better than this. I also want to thank my colleagues, Sunita Rani Garu and my dear Dean Jyotishmay Sharma Garu. So this is a Prasar Bharati activity that we are part of in the University of Hyderabad. And the theme, women empowerment, is very dear to my heart and to all of your hearts, I'm sure. Now G20 is an assembly of humanity that almost represents about 2/3 of the population, both in terms of human population number as well as in terms of human economic activity. So it's a large cross-section of humanity that is now presided over by India in this G20 year, which I think is a very great opportunity as well as a privilege for this upcoming and high-hitting country, Bharat. Women empowerment has been a movement for decades now. It is a work in progress in many societies. In some societies, it is a work in progress in a deeper sense. In some other societies, it is work in progress in a somewhat rudimentary sense. We live in a fairly heterogeneous populational system. In our society in India, I think we have woken up fully well now to this theme of women empowerment. In the construct that we live in the world, there is a deep fallacy that we have really not harnessed women power as much as we ought to have. The data in the developed societies indicate that any society that wants to develop, that has developed, has harnessed women power very effectively. Unless we, the Bharat, do it well, we will not get there. It is as simple as that. So therefore, we have to do it, not necessarily as a tool of workforce. I'm not meaning myself when I say empowerment, it's not necessarily as a toolkit in the form of women workforce. I don't really mean that. I go beyond that. Women empowerment actually is an idea that we have to be committed to, firstly. It's an idea. And once we commit ourselves to this idea percolates in all our actions, in our day-to-day living, as well as in all societal actions. Once we translate this idea into actions, then women empowerment really happens. Of course, workforce participation is an offshoot of that. I'm so glad that G20 has taken up this theme. We have talked about it even beyond G20 mandate, the theme of women empowerment. We as a society have not done it very effectively so far. I must candidly say that. And unless we undo this bit of a failure in our society, we really cannot move forward. And university ecosystem is the best ecosystem. We sensitize young minds towards this idea. It is here we must ensure that our young minds are sensitized to this concept to this idea of women empowerment. And in fact, I would even go to the extent of saying that this we must do even at a school level. Primary school level, high school level, junior college level, at every level. It must begin in families first. Family is our fundamental unit. Parents have to ensure that boys and girls are treated alike. This is very important. So the real upbringing within the family system is the beginning of empowerment of women. If we neglect these layers of society and come to the higher level and then talk of empowerment, it becomes a bit of a shallow movement. So we must actually bring it in at every level. This we have not done it very effectively in the country for the last 70, 75 years. It is high time we do it, and we do it very effectively. This is one opportunity where we remind ourselves that we commit to this idea, we believe in this idea, and then it should come out in every bit of our actions. When I look at today's presentation, it is a cross-section of variety of themes, variety of flavors. And I think this is very exciting. And I think this coverage will enrich us significantly today. Gender sensitization at workforce is a very topical area. We are looking forward to this theme as well as other themes. So I don't want to belabor my points too many times, except to plead that let us commit ourselves to this idea of women empowerment at every level of our existence, and try to see that we handhold the system towards this idea very effectively. I think Bharat can actually provide a model to the rest of the world, because Bharat is in some sense the mini world. Bharat captures the world. If we can do it well in Bharat, it can very well be done in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to invite Professor Jyotirmay Sharma, Dean, School of Social Sciences, University of Hyderabad, to address the gathering.
Vice Chancellor Professor B.J. Rao Garu, Professor Sunita Rani, Director AIR, distinguished speakers, students, ladies and gentlemen. The one thing that Professor Sunita Rani could have done towards women's empowerment is not to ask me to speak. One man's less speaking, even if he happens to be the dean, would have been a great idea. But beyond this, all I want to say is that we've had very significant and inspiring words from the Vice Chancellor, from Professor Sunita Rani, and I wouldn't want to come in between the distinguished speakers and all of you. There's just one point I want to make, which is an extension of what the Vice Chancellor mentioned. And it's this: the very idea of women's empowerment also entails recognizing the struggles that women's empowerment has had over centuries in this country and elsewhere. And the significant idea behind that is we do not have a single idea of greatness. I mean, there are levels at which one can pitch this. Nobody doubts that a country or a society must be great. But there has to be an idea of plurality of ideas of greatness, and there should be freedom to debate those ideas. If there is no freedom to debate the idea of greatness, I think no empowerment, whether of women or of other sections, is possible. And that is at the core of any university's endeavor. If universities cannot provide that space, then it fails in its duty. And this university has always attempted to provide that space. We have had ups and downs once in a while, but I think why I'm proud to be part of this university is that we have contending notions of what it is to be great, and we can debate about them. And that's where I think the Center for Women's Studies stands, to tell us that there is not a singular idea of anything, but there are plural ideas of all things that we might think are cast in stone and there forever. I wish this whole event great success, and again express my deep gratitude to the organizers for allowing me to speak. Thank you very much.
What you just heard was a theme song of G20. On behalf of Akashvani Hyderabad and Center for Women's Studies, University of Hyderabad, I would now like to welcome our guests to the podium to share their ideas, stories, and anecdotes. And our program executive, Nihara Kante, will present our guest with saplings. Our first speaker is someone who truly leads by example every single day. She inspires and empowers women along with a team who works 24/7 to ensure safety in our city. In fact, she herself has on several occasions spoken about how another woman empowered her to become who she is today, her grandmother. Deputy Inspector General of Police, CID, Women's Safety Wing, Srimati Badugula Sumati, IPS. She will be talking on women-led empowerment.
A very good morning to all those who are listening and watching. The entire time all through where a change in mindset through G20 is happening across the country for all the G20 nations. And we all know, myself steering the efforts of our own country in G20, an opportunity which we get once in 20 years. I am here to continue to build the momentum which the Prime Minister has very proudly accorded and said that country stands for 3 S's. that is Suraksha, Suvidha, and Swabhiman. And I represent Suraksha here, and I take forward this today as a part of the G20 deliberations. And I also take few anecdotes which have already been said by the program director, saying that now we have to please voice my choice. I am voicing my own choice here as an experienced professional, first as a citizen of this country, and not just as a woman. And when Sir VC Mr. Rao said that, yes, we failed for the past 75 years, and we have been talking so much of our empowerment, and today we are still talking of the same thing, and we have to make the efforts very fruitful, is something which is very thought-provoking. And that is why the very next speaker who said that plurality of ideas on quarters, where we should have freedom to deliberate on any idea which is plural. And today I take this opportunity to present my own idea through my experience, my background, and my understanding of the society, and working with all sections of society, and specifically with women, children, and others for the past 5 years. That is how I think I am being invited here by the Department of Gender Studies, taking up this particular topic. We all know when the G20 started, a very famous quote had come through the G20 from India, was the quote of Swami Vivekananda, who said that this country cannot, or the world cannot, progress towards welfare or development without considering women as partners, because a bird can't fly with one single wing. 50% of women in the population of the entire world, and still we all know and have to accept that when it comes to decision making, are we able to see the 50% decision making from home, in offices, in industry, in organized workforce, unorganized workforce? But we did not progress to the expected expectations. And now it is time that we have to voice, being a very young country. And yes, when I say gender, the word gender itself, we all know that it is a vital project, it is a very vital project of human existence and human progress as such. And when we are leading the presidency in G20, saying that we stand for this kind of progress for the world, as in the form of Vasudhaika Kutumbam, we cannot leave our own women behind and call about the progress of the entire world. And I am very hopeful, because on 4 aspects, I should say, gender, how it affects the various aspects of development. Second, how gender affects equal stakeholdership in the society on various aspects. Number 3, women leadership at all the levels of decision making, and also the sustainability of outcomes. These are the 4 aspects which I think are very important when it comes to empowerment of women overall, and a holistic empowerment as a subject. And ultimately this is possible now in this 20 years we taking up presidency, because now we are coming up with the gender responsive policies for 20 nations who form almost 60%, I think 75% of the GDP of the world. So what we voice here, each one of us as a young woman, or in whichever capacity we are as a citizen of this country, as a leader, I think makes difference for the entire world. With respect to the gender responsive policies, with respect to the best practices which I have come across in my own department, which we have put forth, which can be scaled up not just to the state, to the country, but to the entire G20 nations, I feel, yes, this is a platform where I can express through Prasar Bharati, and also the progress which we have achieved with respect to policing as an answer for the gender empowerment. And we all know that if opportunities are taken, why could not we get an equal opportunity to progress is something which has to be thought of as a plural idea by men and women alike. How come? Could we not snatch it, or were we not given? Or what actually is a gap which has existed in these 77 years that we are still speaking after 77 years that we have to snatch it? We have to take it forward. We have to look towards gender empowerment in a very perspective where it works. Now the question is, how does it work? I can say it has worked. I am very confidently, after 20 years or almost 20 years of my service, and having come from a very rural area of this particular place, having come up with a family which may not be very well educated but very plural and open at thinking, and which has given a value-based living in the society, is making me stand here to say that as a woman, yes, I have been brought up well in this country where somebody need not come and tell me how we can bridge the gap. It is only the gap, how it exists. It is better understanding of that gap. I think we will progress much forward. Probably, why that understanding has not been there is a question. If it has been there for me, why it has not been there for many other women over who are similar to me is one question which I have to put forward today. Yes, it can be extended. If I have an opportunity to progress, to be empowered, when I belong to a particular institution, either in the society or through the workplace or through execution of my own ideas, I think I should be a leader like to see that the same idea spreads and taken up by many more like me. So, if many more have to be given this idea and taken forward, first thing is I have to be a leader myself. If I have to be a leader myself, I have to be at the decision-making level. That is where the G20 presidency sets in, that more and more leaders among the women have to be at a decision-making level to make these things happen for many more, and where 50% of the people who are women also become active participants in the progress of the entire world. That comes through the economic empowerment, as we have seen. All the three aspects I have touched. One is Suraksha, Suvidha and Swabhiman. If I have to achieve Swabhiman, if I have to achieve Suvidha, I think I have to go forward. First, achieving Suraksha for everybody. Automatically the other two will set in, is what each one of you will believe, whoever are listening or whoever wants, because every man has a woman around them in some form or the other. Why only women are said to be very vulnerable? Why only children are said to be very vulnerable? Why only senior citizens are said to be very vulnerable? But why not men and other genders, whatever we say? And that itself shows that first understanding that there is a diversity, that what I pose, that I am different from the other sectors, other sections of the society, understanding that I am different itself sets the tone in a very right way is what I feel. So, if somebody has to understand that I am different, how do I make society understand that I am different? The policy has to be very gender specific. It has to be very sensitive towards understanding. For example, I am a leader. Probably Mr. Rao sir also is a leader in his own capacity as a VC. But maybe my perspective of thinking as a woman is entirely different from the perspective of how he thinks. We have to start accepting that leadership styles differ. It is not like a woman leader or a man leader. It is leadership styles which differ, which has to be very equitably accepted now and portrayed to the entire world. Now accept, make enough studies how women as leader thinks different from man as a leader. It is only a difference, and it is neither low nor high. And if the policy also comes forth by thinking that leadership styles vary when woman is a leader for an organization, however small or big, I think we can progress much more forward in a very pluralistic way is what I feel. Now considering all these 4 points, that is how it affects the aspects of development, how we can become equal stakeholders in development, how women leadership at all the levels in decision making can be forayed, and then sustainability of outcomes, I take myself an opportunity for answering 5 different topics among the policing. One is how we have come across the gender responsive policies in the policing with respect to this state. I can very proudly say that this is the youngest state in the nation, and definitely our policies, our way of thinking towards the gender equality matters for the entire country and thereby for the G20 also. For the elite students who are sitting here and also for the people who are listening, the moment the state was formed, women empowerment was one of the very important topics for the government itself at the state level also. And there was a committee, core committee, which was formed by the government, which was headed by the bureaucrats belonging to various and diverse backgrounds and also industry. And these bureaucrats may be IAS, IPS, IFS, and from the industry body and academia. All these have gone to different cross-sections of women answering what bothers you. And when that deliberations went on for almost 6 to 8 months, about 120 recommendations have come forth. I think study of those recommendations by the gender studies is very important. How we have achieved with respect to policing is only what I will deliberate today. Among 120 recommendations, roughly 21 were for the police. And today I will say what were the ideas presented by the common women across, cutting across different cross sections, what they wanted from policing. Number 1, they said the seeming safety for women in public spaces. I walk, I know I go, I come, I eat, I sleep. I have to feel safe when I walk. Maybe safety is assured through various mechanisms of execution. But how about the feeling of safety? That was one question which was raised by cross sections of people across the society, that a woman walks. When I make my daughter go out, I have to feel safe. When a woman goes in the night, they have to feel safe. Feeling safety is different from actually being safe. That was one important thing. And number 2, the sexual violence or abuse which women met out because being physically weak, biologically physically weak, I should say I may be biologically less strong. I cannot even call weak. I may be biologically less strong. That should not make society think that I can be a matter of abuse. This is the second thing, which most important recommendation which was put forth. How do you arrest this kind of sexual abuse or abuse on women, whether it is within the 4 walls or in the public spaces? And more so the serious sexual abuse. This is number 2. And number 3, the safety at workspaces, which one of the participants is ready to speak on that today. And third, and of course, which are not concerned to my department, there were many with respect to nutrition, with respect to development, with respect to equal opportunities at various places, in places of work, in the places of decision making, XYZs. And yes, this state has definitely gone forward, I should say. There was a lot of deliberations, then research, then followed by that. You all know a concept of research was She Teams, which has come forward. Now She Teams is emulated in many states in different forms. What is so different that I have to speak about She Teams for a G20 presidency meeting? Yes, it is. Because all that development which goes by without any evidence backing it is not a development at all. All that issues which go by with a solution which doesn't back with evidence is not a solution at all. Hope you all agree with me with that. And when we went with this concept of She Teams, we said that yes, Safety 1 and seeming safety 2. Both have to be achieved parallelly like a railway track. So how to achieve it? So we thought when women is going in public space, because this state being the youngest state, having 40% of urbanization, and we also feel that urbanization is going to be on a very rapid stride compared to any other state in the country, in this part of the country, thinking that how do I address this when a woman walks out? Whether it is from an organized sector or an unorganized sector or a homemaker or whatever it is, or a child. We thought of developing the system of hotspots. Where are the places where women is feeling very unsafe? Then when we went ahead, we found that it is just before the educational institutions where there are larger gatherings, because women are being harassed overtly or covertly in public spaces by touching, by behaving very indecently, is something where we wanted to address it. For that, she teams were formed. They started covering these hotspots, just covering people who are actually harassing women with evidence. And once the evidence was developed and once the people were called that, see, this is what this particular person has done. It need not be very gendered. It need not be a man alone. Sometimes it can be of same gender also, but very less. Parents were not ready to accept. The teachers or the lecturers were not ready to accept that that particular person is doing this unless evidence was shown. That's the first step. I think even in the G20 final drafts which are coming up, anything which goes gender empowered is that which is based on evidence. So this was the first successful thing which has now been taken as a policy by the government, and many states have come forward. Every single action of what happens or what a she team does is well documented and evidence based, and it is not punitive. The person who is called upon to show their misbehavior is not punished. They are just given a chance by showing that particular evidence. That's why it is a big success. I think it can be straight away adopted as a national policy is what I feel. And it can be drafted in a resolution if required so. And second thing is, because my time is limited, I can just say on the concept of bharosa, that is sexual abuse. Yes, Government of India has come up with a one-stop centers which have now become one-stop centers to address only domestic abuse, but not the sexual abuse or the serious sexual abuse. Telangana has come up, Telangana Police has come up with the concept called one-stop center by name Bharosa. You all know that once somebody is meted out to a serious sexual abuse, either they do not want to go to a police station to say it, or they don't want to continue to work with a police station until trial to be re-victimized. In order to stop this re-victimization, number one, and number two, to make that woman or whoever it is, boy or a girl, who has been meted out with serious sexual abuse, that they are part of the larger society, and to see that they are well compensated and rehabilitated, everything is brought under one single roof. The moment an FIR is registered, the victim or the survivor is got to this particular Bharosa center, where we come up with whole lot of people who are experts and not the police. It is back driven by police and front driven by the people who are experts, expert counselors, a legal expert, also an expert who does all kind of examination, that is a medical expert, and all of them coming into one roof and taking the statement to the court also online for the survivor has worked. And even in the Nipun Saxena judgment from the Supreme Court has pointed out that the entire country, all the police can come up with a concept like this for the all the states. And that's what makes me speak about how we can definitely address. The takeaways from this are, our conviction rate was just 7%, which has risen to almost 30% in serious sexual abuse cases through this particular concept. Number two, the victim compensation. The moment a survivor is brought to a Bharosa center, they are compensated by the government because it has been made part of the SOPs. When Empower Woman comes up when one of the business women from here, from Telangana, also spoke in Empower Women. She was saying that we are coming up with the KPIs for the leaders, that is women who are part of self-help groups, where they can assess their own leadership, their own outcomes, and how they can be given an entrepreneurial opportunities. I think we have come up with enough KPIs when we have come up with these kind of initiatives. This is number 2. And I will stop with respect to initiatives here because they are worked. They have been worked and independent studies have been conducted how they have impacted women in the society. And even the studies by CES and independent agencies can be gone through how they have worked. I think any of the interested students can actually go through the CES study on the SHE teams also, on Bharosa also, how they are working. And what is our experiences and exposure to the unorganized sectors? Because we all know that nearly 80% of the women work in the unorganized sectors only. So we have to more address the rural India and the unorganized sectors in the urban India, where, or even in the countries which are developing, other than the 50% of G20 developed nations. So our experiences with unorganized sectors is lack of understanding of the laws. Most people, though we have women-centric laws, except for certain laws where there have been enough deliberations right up to the apex court, that is 498A or so, but there not have been enough deliberations or various sections of law. Like for example, I can say POSH Act. POSH Act with respect to unorganized sectors is still not even a point of deliberation in any meetings, leaving the organized sectors. I think this is one area where it can be explored much more, because even in POSH Act, I can say with experience that a woman, whoever comes out to represent or say that I am being sexually victimized, is re-victimized, because most of the time the bosses are men, number 1. And lack of sensitivity towards understanding what falls under the sexual ambit and what doesn't fall under the sexual ambit. I may feel that I am sexually harassed, but for my boss it may appear, because quote unquote I can say a man thinks very plainly that mentally I am very happy the way I am doing for women. But when it comes to physically what is being done for the women, I think it is a big question. What Rao sir also has said, that is the reason why we are still working upon it after 77 years. So it is not mental wellness which I have to think out as a man boss or a boss who is a man, but it is actually the physical wellness on the field which I have to see in organized and unorganized sectors. When we go for the trafficking issues, en masse rescue of children who are being trafficked for various purposes at various places, we see there are no bridge schools, because no supervisor asks for a bridge school. There is, government does provide, but who will come? Who will enact it? It is not the job of Labor Department alone. There is a proper SOP in place, but civil activism has to be of such a high level that they have to demand and ensure that there is a bridge school when a big unorganized sector or a construction happens in a particular place. Why should a child be abrogated of studies just because they come from some other state and study here, work here? All the laborers who come from Orissa, who enter into Telangana, they are divided because there is no medium of study in Oriya, in here for an organized sector. A small example like that. So trafficking per se is not an issue. What are the outcomes of trafficking also with respect to gender parity? They do connote certain amounts of gender issues which have to be addressed. Most of the children who come here are females. And it is a happy go thing that it is not required. Kya hoga? If 1 year, if it is stopped, doesn't matter. Once this construction is over, I will go away. Then let me think of joining. And who will explore the opportunity of this gap? Who will explore to see that this gap is filled? This is true. And more sad part is, when we analyze, for example, in the last Operation Muskan, when we could register under the JJ Act as well as Child Labor Act, about 470 plus cases. most of the cases are where children are part of agricultural labor and where parents are not sensitized to see that my child have certain rights which have to be protected. They do send for the agricultural labor. Who will bring? I think all young minds across the country, everybody has to work out to see that we also, it is not just about execution of a law which is important. It is also about understanding that why and how, under what perspective the law functions. It is the responsibility of the civil society to bring forth, is what I feel as a civil servant putting up so many years of service. Now next, coming to requirement of more women in police and the related sectors, I feel it is an indicator towards the empowerment. We have to reach the critical mass. Unless women reach that critical mass, I think it is very, very difficult for us to see all these gender-based laws work, and women come, not just the critical mass, coming from the medium decision-making level to the senior levels of decision-making is one more thing. And yes, finally, the G20 related takeaways, I can say that women empowerment, where the Prime Minister has spoken very recently from the Red Fort about the 10 years of government's report card on the women empowerment. It was very squarely said that we have come across various things where gender equality and women empowerment, various measures which in the form of Nari Shakti, what government has taken up. But real Nari Shakti, I feel it has to start. I will not agree that it should start with the family. It has to start from every individual. And once the individual thinks that it is required, and second thing is the leaders who are breaking the glass ceilings, the leaders who are able to say that I have come to this level because of this, we have to build the bridges for others. And so big a bridge and so strong a bridge that hundreds and thousands of people walk on it to make a very empowered world and very empowered India and very empowered society overall. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Your words are just as inspiring as your work is. The gender gap at workplaces may be narrowing, but there's still a lot of daylight. And statistics say that women in workplace are more empowered than men. Women's empowerment in a workplace is an essential aspect in creating a diverse and innovative work environment, increasing employment satisfaction as well as retention, as well as promoting gender equality. For more on this, I would like to invite our next speaker, Ms. Ekta Bahal. She is a lawyer and runs Samvad Partners. She will be talking on gender sensitization at workplace.
After so many wonderful speakers, it's a tough act to follow. Thank you, ma'am. What you said gives a lot to reflect on. Thank you, Center for Women Studies, University of Hyderabad, for having me over. Akashvani, for organizing such a dialogue. It's not often that we get so many different diverse minds to talk about something with a common thread of where gender is involved. We talk about violence, we'll talk about empowerment, but we talk in silos. Here we're having a common ground to engage in dialogue, and I hope these dialogues continue. I come from a professional field as a lawyer. I look at workspaces. I look at gender diverse issues as a partner of a firm, and woman myself, as a mother, as a spouse, as a person who lives in a community. And when we come to gender sensitization, and then limit my conversations to the workplace, to start with, and I'm going to liberally quote from the Supreme Court. I'm going to quote from documents which the government has set out. So not all these words are mine. Bhavri Devi. Anybody's heard of Bhavri Devi? Bhavri Devi, she was gang raped in 1992. And her long legal battle led the Supreme Court to, in 1997, 5 years after she was raped, to formulate the Vishakha guidelines, which were the first set of guidelines dealing with sexual harassment issues in the workspace. Following that, the National Commission for Women formulated a code of conduct for workplace in 1998, which over the years underwent modifications. However, this was not enough. There were challenges in implementing implementation of Vishaka guidelines and the draft codes of conduct, and it became very clear that there was a need for a legislation to deal with issues of sexual harassment at the workplace. In 2007, which is a good 10 years after the Vishaka guidelines, public comments were invited for the draft protection of women against sexual harassment at a workplace bill. And this was approved by the Union Cabinet 3 years later in 2010. The Protection of Women Against Sexual Harassment at Workplace Bill 2010 was introduced and approved by the Lok Sabha, and then in the same year was sent across to the Standing Committee on Human Resource Development, which submitted its report a year later on November 30th, 2011. After considering these recommendations that were set up by the committee, the 2010 bill was amended and it was passed by the Lok Sabha in 2012 as the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Bill, which is the name that the POSH Act continues to go by. The entire process of having a legislation in place was again came into focus with the Nirbhaya case, which unfortunately happened in 2012. In 2013, we got the legislation on sexual harassment at a workplace. The POSH Act took 15 years in the making after the Vishaka judgment, and this is the 10th year of the POSH Act. And this year, earlier this year, the Honorable Supreme Court noted the serious lapses in the implementation of the POSH Act itself. And I'm going to liberally quote from the judgment here. The Honorable Supreme Court noted that being a victim of such a deplorable act not only dents the self-esteem of women, it also takes a toll on her emotional, mental, and physical health. It went on to state that it is often seen that when women face sexual harassment at the workplace, they are reluctant to report such misconduct. Many of them even drop out from the job. One of the reasons for this reluctance to report is that there is an uncertainty about who to approach under the Act for redressal or their grievance. Another is the lack of confidence in the process and its outcome. This social malady needs urgent amelioration through robust and efficient implementation of the Act. The Honorable Court further said, however salutary this enactment may be, it will never succeed in providing dignity and respect that women deserve at the workplace unless and until there is strict adherence to the enforcement regime and a proactive approach by all the state and non-state actors. If the working environment continues to remain hostile, insensitive, and unresponsive to the needs of women employees, then the Act will remain an empty formality. If the authorities, management, employers cannot assure them a safe and secure workplace, they will fear stepping out of their homes to make a dignified living and exploit their talent and skills to the hilt. It has been more than 25 years since the Vishaka guidelines came about, and the conversations on women's safety, gender equality, and appropriate workplace behavior still continue to be relevant. One of the obligations, if you look at the POSH Act, one of the obligations of employer is to sensitize and organize workshops and sensitization drives for employees, to make them aware of the provisions of the Act. However, we need to note that not all inappropriate behaviors are in the form of sexual harassment. In fact, on July 19th, 2019, the Ministry of Women and Child Development, through a notification published by the Press Information Bureau, actually said the root cause of gender discrimination is the patriarchal mindset prevalent in the Indian society. Though this mindset is changing with urbanization and education, there's still a long way to go for a permanent change in the scenario. Gender bias, racism, and stereotyping, as well as deep-rooted prejudices and behaviors, are leading causes for women gender discrimination. While women-focused dialogue is very common, the same cannot be said about dialogues across all categories of employees in an organization. The Supreme Court recently came out with a handbook on combating stereotypes, and in that it said, we may rely on stereotypes inadvertently because stereotypes are often internalized and ingrained in our thinking due to societal, cultural, and environmental conditioning. Stereotypes can greatly influence our thinking and lead to discriminations on several fronts. Workplace is just one of them. While issues with respect to sexual harassment have been legislated and there is awareness, other forms of gender and workplace discrimination are swept under the carpet. However, the same can manifest in several ways. By way of examples, Variable standards in terms of gender appropriateness. Certain qualities and attributes are acceptable in men, but not acceptable in other genders. And I think, Vaijanti, you can also talk more about that. Recognition of only male-female gender when it comes to workspaces. Non-acceptance of transgenders or homosexuals. Again, Vaijanti, that is something that you can stress on. Because these are, when we talk about gender sensitivity, it's not only about recognizing of the two genders when we relate to sex. There are other sensitivities also that are required. Unconscious and implicit biases, including in the form of stereotypes, towards not just in the form of gender, but also class, caste, language, etc. Some behaviors, including in the form of word choices, reinforce biases and stereotypes. Common example of that is when we make jokes about the role of women in a home or role of women when it comes to child bringing. It may be just a joke, but it is also reinforcing stereotypes. The old boys club, which happen in almost every organization. These old boys clubs are not welcoming to people that do not conform to their criteria. Therefore, categories of personnel, which is like women, get excluded from conversations and decision making. Humor that is personal. Jokes targeted by any person or community on the basis of gender, caste, community, language can reinforce prejudices, biases, and stereotypes. As per the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Report of 2022, India ranked 135 out of 146 countries when it came to percentage of women working in the formal sector. Data from International Labour Organization suggests that employability gender gap in India is 50.9%, with only 19.2% women in the labour force compared to 70.1% of men. One of the reasons that women have been falling out of employment are gender-based issues and concerns. So what can be done? Organizations need to reflect on their own ethos and culture. That one defines their set of values and principles when it comes to equality and equity. 2, formulate practices and policies that are applicable to all personnel, irrespective of gender. 3rd, sensitize and engage. And engaging is important. Sensitization is a one-way dialogue. It is, I can speak to everybody, but there's no engagement on cultures, practices, appropriate behaviors, gender, bias, etc. Today we have a cross-cultural sect of people in a workspace. It is not one community. You have people both from urban and rural India working in the same force, probably speaking the same language when it comes to a spoken language, but the underlying meanings, the cultural context could be very different. And maintain diversity in the workplace. Having a heterogeneous workplace is healthy. It improves us and our ability as well. 5, provide safe spaces for personnel to communicate on issues with respect to inappropriate workspace behavior. And this is not law-driven that I have a POSH Act, I can make a complaint. It could be workplace behaviors that bother me. I have a safe space where I can communicate. Can I bring about workspace behavior changes? Can I be a change leader? Change does not come easy, and change does take time. Change needs thought leaders. Quite often, policies are lip service and only on paper. There is a need for the leadership to walk the talk. To make gender sensitization effective in organizations, it is imperative that the leadership of the organization to believe and spearhead the change. We need to step out of the shackles of patriarchy, which come hand in hand with stereotypes, deep-rooted bias and prejudices. The fundamentals of an organization should be built on principles of respect and equality. And I'll quote author and a poet, Vera Nazarene, from her book, which is Perpetual Calendar for Inspiration. A woman is human. She is not better, wiser, stronger, more intelligent, more creative, or more responsible than a man. Likewise, she is never less. Equality is a given. A woman is human. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your words. Do you know Telangana is the only state in India that has something called an innovative cell? And helming it is the state's first CIO, Chief Innovation Officer. She's a gold medalist in BTech. She holds MS and PhD in electrical engineering from New Mexico State University. With over 5 years of experience as analog IC designer in Texas, she drove 10 startups and over 10 patents at the university's Arrowhead Center. She led T-Hub's key corporate innovative initiatives, aiding over 170 startups to graduate with $130 million funding and 7 acquisitions. Let's welcome Dr. Shanta Tautam. She will be speaking on closing the digital gender divide.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone on the stage, off the stage, and the students who are here today. I'm so glad to be part of this another G20 event. In fact, when the G20 presidency started, the G20 Startup 20 event, the inception event happened in Hyderabad, and we hosted almost 250 international delegations in Hyderabad, showcasing not only the cultural and heritage of Telangana, but also the innovation ecosystem of Telangana. So most of you guys know that we have, after the state was formed in 2014, our Honorable IT Minister KTR sir thought about how would we make Hyderabad as a startup destination of the world, and then the journey has begun, and 9 years later, we have created a world-class innovation ecosystem in Telangana, and we have the best practices that we are sharing with not only the state ecosystems, but also international countries who wanted to kind of go back to their own setting and create their own innovation ecosystem. So the inception meeting happened in Telangana, and I had an opportunity to even attend the Shikhar, the culmination event in Gurgaon a couple months ago. And so glad to be part of this event today and talk a little bit about the gender digital gap. As I'm the innovation officer of Telangana and working with the innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem that we have built from scratch, not only in Hyderabad, but also across the 33 districts of Telangana. I just wanted to re-emphasize this point that the innovation ecosystem that we have built is inclusive, and it's across the 33 districts of Telangana. So we get to see a lot of technologies in and out on a daily basis. We get to see a lot of startups emerging in and out on a daily basis. And we get to see what kind of skilling is happening across the state too. With the advent of the innovation ecosystem, the startup culture, we hear a lot about the skill gap, and what exactly the government of Telangana is doing even to kind of bridge that gap. When it comes to digital, the gender gap, yes, not only our state, but across the globe, we are seeing a lot of reports emerging wherein the World Economic Forum or could be any other agency which is kind of doing the root analysis of what exactly is this problem. Why are we getting to see this problem? So the stats are talking about access to technology. With the advent of this startup and innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem across the globe, technologies are changing on a daily basis. If you see WhatsApp, without WhatsApp, can Indians survive now? Not really. We are really good at adopting technology because we have, the largest population across the globe. And when we adopt technology, it's a success. Facebook, it's a success. All of these startups, they're startups, and they came up with these emerging technologies. And we are really good at adopting these technologies. But the access to these technologies for women is lacking for sure. There are stark differences between how women and men are adopting these technologies, the emerging technologies. How many women understands robotics? It's an emerging technologies. How many women understands AI and ML? All of these are emerging technologies, the drone technologies. Even when it comes to the sheer fact of startups, how many women startups are existing across India or globally? We see a stark difference between men and women accepting technologies, accessing technologies, and building upon technologies. The other fact is the skilling gap. Yes, there is a lot of skilling gap. Ma'am mentioned about it. Rao Garu mentioned about it. If you take STEM education, yes, Telangana and both the Telugu-speaking states, we are doing phenomenally when it comes to girl child and boy child participating in STEM education. But having said that, the unorganized markets, men mentioned about it. How many of us are digitally skilled? With the advent of internet, and that too at the economic price, If you take Geo, how Geo kind of democratized the internet access. But having said that, do we have that right skill set, the right proficiency? It's not just like scratching the surface and just learning about some technology, but having that proficiency so that we can carve a niche for ourselves when we get into the market, when we go back the employment opportunities. Another one is the online presence. Social media platforms, zillion social media platforms, in and out on a daily basis we are getting to see. So these are all a lot of, the stats which are kind of projecting at, why there is a gap, why we are not, men and women are not equally adopting technology, the digital technologies that are emerging on a daily basis. And when it comes to, one of the causes is the income disparity for sure. Unorganized market, Ekta ji just now mentioned about, almost 70% are taking up unorganized markets and working in unorganized markets. The disparity is huge, even though someone like who is working as on a daily wager women cannot afford a smartphone. The priority is given to either a male child or someone in the family who is the breadwinner. So we cannot afford such kind of devices also, to kind of be on top of internet or learn some things. Even the self-help group women, the entrepreneurs, they are not having digital literacy to kind of use all these digital platforms to scale up their enterprises, to take their the enterprises to the next level. We have seen that on ground for sure. And also a couple other things, the quality of education. Even for job opportunities, you need to be an expert. Nowadays, a person who is having generic skill set is not validated in the market. You need to be an expert. You need to kind of understand the emerging technologies. You need to stay on top of things. Then only you will find the right opportunities, the right job opportunities for you to establish in the market. And also, we have this herd mentality too. Women, if one woman wanted to get into technical space, but the other peers of her are not interested in technical space, then automatically we have this internal barrier. We do have the social and organizational barriers, but on top we have these internal barriers. The reverse internal engineering is not happening for women is what I think personally, but due to those barriers and the peer pressure, we kind of succumb and we say like we'll settle for non-technical things too. Whenever I go to for sensitizing degree college students, I see a lot of women getting into degree courses because that's a safe bet for them. That's like a lower hanging fruit for them. And from the socio-economic strata, wherever they are kind of emerging from, they opt for these kind of courses. STEM is, whatever, even including arts also is becoming a bigger achievement for them, for women especially. A few other things. Of course, many of us know about this. I don't need to talk about it. The demanding domestic roles that we women, we have to kind of balance in and out. People do think like technical women toil a lot and they kind of, because we have the biological clock and the professional clock ticking at the same time and we have to balance both. And a lot of sacrifices, yes, we have to make, but again, or the women at the lower strata or across the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, they understand like what it takes to have a balanced life, having a technical subject matter expertise and also working at home and taking care of the family roles too. So as Government of Telangana, to bridge this the digital gender gap and also like to address at every aspect the skilling gap also, we have an academy, it's a task, Telangana Academy for Skill and Knowledge, which is again focusing on preparing our students, especially women students also, on the industry-ready skill set. So we are not leaving any stone unturned. Even when it comes to entrepreneurship, to promote entrepreneurship in women. 50% entrepreneurship can be contributed. The 50% of GDP can be contributed by women. So we do have an incubation center, explicitly state-led one for women entrepreneurs, VHub. So we thought about not just that, like the schemes to kind of promote girl child, the education of girl child. Even when it comes to innovation, we go to sensitize school students, especially Jilla Parishad high school students, on innovation, entrepreneurship and design thinking. The sheer aspects, every student should have access to these concepts, because as they kind of promote and kind of scale up in their life, these aspects do help them in having a very strong strata. So at the Jilla Parishad high schools, we have a lot of girl child who are part of the programs, and we do provide a lot of hand holding for them, so that they're not dropping out of schools and becoming entrepreneurs, but also kind of initiate something, innovate something, and take the concept to the next level. The self-help group women are getting a lot of support from the ecosystem through VHub and other entities. Right now, when the state was formed, in fact, 9 years ago, there were only 2 incubation centers, but now we have 80 incubation centers. So a lot of focus is on having the innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem across the state, but also equally having women to take part in entrepreneurship. But how it happens, it has to we have to focus a lot on comprehensive learning. How would we teach the women? We have to get into the ground, and teach the women on the digital skills, and also improve their proficiency. Even when it comes to the digital literacy, how women can use apps and the financial tools, any digital tool to take their enterprise to the next level. A lot of CSR grants are flown into the state, and they come to us, they wanted to kind of engage with women. We did a survey in a couple districts across the state to understand the digital literacy, the financial literacy of the women. To our surprise, almost 50 to 60% women are using technology, and they understand the right tools, like even using UPIs for digital transactions to scale up their innovations and, the enterprises. But we wanted to kind of take that number to the next level. We wanted to use these tools and teach women on the digital tools, the financial tools available, the schemes and the registration process to be on the central portals, how they can use these, not only the schemes, but also the platforms that are available for women to kind of take their enterprises to the next level. And also, the interventions, right set of interventions for all women who are coming from different walks of the life. So we have to tailor-make programs for these women, because it's not just the women who are educated, but we get to see a lot of women who are in innovation space and not having proper education. So we have to kind of get to the level where they understand innovation. One of our successful innovator from Gadwal district, she came up with a biopod because she saw, growing saplings in a piece of plastic is not good for the environment. But we kind of supported her and helped her to take her innovation to the next level. Right now, her mom and aunt are fabricating these biodegradable pots sitting in Gadwal, Chintalkunta village of Gadwal. So that kind of empowerment is provided to the women on the skilling and also entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem of Telangana. And in fact, we talk about all these things, but there should be some role models. Yes, ma'am talked about women empowerment, but setting up the role models is the key. So when we talk about women empowerment and also seeing more women in STEM and digital space, the VHub Incubation Center is already promoting more women to kind of emerge in emerging technologies and start up their businesses. But also Government of Telangana is a bellwether, is a role model to many other states and other ecosystems. We have 10 state-led entities, and 5 of them are holding the helm of these 10 organizations. So the women empowerment started way ahead in Telangana, and Sumati ma'am already mentioned about it. She being an IPS officer in the state of Telangana and looking at various aspects of women empowerment, she is the testimony for this for sure. And also, the impact is like once we have the right set of interventions for the digital gender gap, what are the interventions we need? We know the causes, we know what need to be done, but the interventions and ensuring like we are accountable to, to ensure things are happening on ground. So once we have all the set of interventions happening and women actively leveraging these opportunities and scaling up and going to the next level makes a lot of difference, not only in entrepreneurship, but also the financial inclusion, voicing your opinion, gender inclusive, responsive laws. Even for us to kind of be part of those discussions, you need to understand, you need to know what kind of laws are existing and what improvisations we have to do for our betterment. And also, very importantly, once we are digitally educated, the world is shrinking, and we have access to everything: education, a better health system. We know what we want, and again, once we get onto the online platforms, there is a lot of stereotyping on, men leveraging the online platforms and women not leveraging the online platforms because, the cyber crimes, and we have to be, a little bit careful about it. But the right laws which are applicable to take care of these cyber crimes. Even we do have an innovation ecosystem which is kind of focusing on building the right technologies for cyber security also. The security councils which are happening at every part of the state and the country and the globe. A lot of technical improvements are happening, but it's up to us. How would we kind of carve a niche for ourselves and digitally empowered so that we contribute 50% to the GDP of this country. So I really appreciate AIR for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. I'm really happy to be part of this and be part of this event and listen from the other dignitaries. So thank you so much. And to all the viewers, and all the best for your future. And do go back to your settings and teach the women around you. And make sure they are digitally literate and they contribute to the economic development of this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your empowering words and sharing your experiences with us. So most people understand women empowerment to simply mean the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of sexes. But that definition leaves out a lot of nuance about what effective and inclusive feminism actually is. Simply put, trans exclusion makes feminism weaker for trans as well as cis women alike. And our next speaker is an RTI and transgender activist. I would like to call on stage our program executive, Seema Kumari, to present her with a sapling. Ms. Vaijayanti Vasanta Mogli, and she will be speaking on economic inclusion of trans women.
Thank you for this opportunity. I think it's a huge privilege to be able to share the insights and the journeys of trans women here. And it's a tall order to match up to the caliber of the earlier speakers. The economic inclusion of trans women in India, in Telangana, and a comparative study of that world over is what I shall dwell upon. Beginning with the private sector in India and giving a short review of the historicity of transgender persons, particularly transgender women. Incidentally, unfortunately, for decades, for centuries, throughout independent India, and perhaps even before that, in the last 1 century or 2 centuries or so, since the time India was not independent. Transgender women, particularly transgender women, have largely been relegated to 2 to 3 traditional sources of livelihood, which is very unfortunate. 1 being begging, 2 being sex work, 3 being asked to come to auspicious and festive occasions like a childbirth, wedding, betrothal, engagement, and so on, and offer blessings and take some dan dakshina. As compared to the women's rights movement and many other movements, be it women's rights or caste-based equality, the rights of persons with disabilities, the transgender rights movement is fairly nascent. It's very, very nascent. The very first pan-India advancement that we had was very recent as 9 years ago, through a very historic and a landmark judgment called the Nalsa versus Union of India judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, before which, mind you, there was nothing pan-India at the legal architecture level to protect and uphold the rights of transgender persons. So it's quite as recent as that. Now, as I said, that I shall begin with the private sector, the unorganized sector, and then move on to the public sector. And I'm aware of the paucity of time. I shall stick to my 15 minutes. From here, in these 9 or 10 years, and particularly after the enactment of the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019, which got enacted only about 4 years ago, and which got notified only in 2020 through the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Rules 2020, there have been a host of some schemes, welfare schemes that were designed to include transgender persons into quote-unquote mainstream employment livelihoods, and I shall take you through some. The SMILE scheme, which is the support for marginalized individuals for livelihood and enterprise that was heralded by the Government of India, is at its nascent form. If you go to the National Transgender Portal, you will see that as compared to the census of 2011, which said that we are 500,000, which is heavily underquoted because it was held in 2011, mind you. When most transgender persons were subsumed under female if they were transitioned, because there was no transgender option on Aadhaar or voter ID. Most of them were subsumed under female. That said that we are 500,000. Now, if I were to take you through a global average that of Professor Gary Gates, who's a professor of public policy at the University of Los Angeles, he says that about 2 to 3% of any population across any geography could be transgender, 8 to 10% could be LGBT. And that's precisely also what the Government of India gave as a sworn affidavit in the Supreme Court in Navtej Singh Johar and others versus Union of India, which is the popularly called the 377 judgment. So if we look at our ballpark figures right now, we are trailing perhaps at 140 crores, 1.4 billion. 1% of that is 1.4 crores, 2% of that could be 2 crores 80 lakhs. But the census is perhaps about 50 times lesser than that. And I don't blame it then because there was no legal architecture to include us at that point of time. But if you look at the Telangana Samagra Kutumba survey that was held soon after the formation of Telangana, even then the population did not cover trans men, female to male trans men, it did not cover. So at that point of time in August when it was held, it enumerated us at almost 60,000, 59,000 something, but primarily covers trans women. Thereafter, after the passage of the Act and the rules, there's been quite a splash in the organized private sector, particularly in the organized private sector. There was a lull between Nalsa and Navtej. Nalsa happened in, as you know, in April 2014, while Navtej 377 judgment happened in September 2018, the Supreme Court judgments. Because the Nas Foundation judgment got reversed in December 2018 through Kaushal, Suresh Kumar Kaushal. The private sector went into a bit of a lull. It said we can't go against the law and have any inclusion and so on. But then it all splashed after, it splashed into a bit of a rainbow, but only and particularly in the organized private sector, the Wall Street giants, the large big names of Indian Wall Street giants as well. So they've come up with policies as gender inclusive washrooms. Some universities have, perhaps yours has, I don't know. Tata Institute of Social Sciences has. What things that are considered to be given, for example, access to washrooms is not really a luxury. Right, it gets protected under right to life with dignity, and access to public sanitation is a part of that. The struggles that communities have had is to actually go to court to have access to washrooms. So you can imagine how way behind the transgender rights movement is as compared to the women's rights movement or the disability rights movement. Now, I'll move on to the disorganized private sector. We are barely there. We are barely there. You will barely see transgender persons as construction laborers. In fact, that was one of our struggles in the PIL in the High Court, because Asra pensions were available for 10 different categories like toddy tappers, weavers, persons living with HIV, senior citizens, and so on and so forth, 10 different categories. And the government of Telangana's affidavit kept saying that insofar as transgender persons are within these 10 categories, we can accommodate them, but they don't exist in any of these 10 categories. And thankfully, we now, I was one of the principal petitioners in that, transgender persons have been included as a separate category over and above these 10 categories. So that we are able to, particularly the below poverty line, working class transgender persons have some basic social security. I'll now move on to the public sector. The government of Telangana in particular has come up with the economic rehabilitation scheme with a very small budget of 2 crores this year. It was the baby step. It's a baby step. I'm very sure and confident that it'll grow ahead in times ahead, of giving loans of about 50,000 to 75,000 or 1 lakh to those transgender persons with a transgender certificate and a white ration card to set up their own small businesses. It could be a Xerox shop, it could be a tea stall, it could be anything. But here too, there's a huge skill gap. The preceding speaker spoke about skill gaps. So it's not enough if our people just get the money, because they may have a dream, but they don't have a roadmap or skill to have their ideas incubated. So it's extremely important that it's our responsibility and also the responsibility of government and the private sector to have us tied up, to have our CBOs, community-based organizations, particularly the Transgender Welfare Board that's been set up under the Act, to tie up with such initiatives and bridge that skill deficit, to have us form self-help groups. I'll give you a few examples. In Warangal, in Hyderabad, people have, particularly in Hyderabad, there have been 2 to 3 batches of jute bag makers at the Durgabai Mahila Sisu Vikasa Kendram in Kukatpalli, who are now trying to be jute entrepreneurs. I mean, as of now, they are jute bag makers and jute bag workers, but they're doing their teeny-weeny bit to become jute entrepreneurs. Similarly, in Warangal, we've had transgender persons manage a generic drug pharmacy, Sarasamayina Dharala Pharmacy, at a government hospital. We've also had transgender persons in Warangal manage nurseries, plant nurseries, community kitchens in Tamil Nadu, particularly, I mean, these are not very profit-making, particularly community kitchens which are meant to feed the poor, to do some community work. And there are very many examples from very many other states. Now, these are welfare schemes. Now I'll move on to employment in the public sector. This is a place where we must get our act together, because in a state like Telangana, and this is an invitation, I'm not I don't wish to only highlight the deficit, but I think it's an open invitation where we must seize the opportunity in a state like Telangana, where women have had horizontal reservations. I think very many states, not just Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and very many states have already made it the law of the land to implement horizontal reservations, which are based on gender, mind you. Horizontal reservations are actually intersectional reservations. Although the Supreme Court uses the word horizontal, they are not unidimensional. They are based on either disability and gender, like a plus sign, or caste and gender, so as to ensure that women of all walks of life get a pie in public employment. Similarly, this has to be extended. Now what's happening is it's happening in piecemeal. Each time, very recently my friend Dr. Koyala Ruth John Paul applied to NEET PG medical education. She got a fairly good rank, but not enough to get her a seat in OBGYN, gynecology and obstetrics. But we had to move the High Court, and based on the interim orders of the High Court, I'm glad that just this week she's got a seat in ESIC Sanat Nagar. We've also had police constables who've applied as trans women, as trans men across constable and SI roles. And you know, many ministries and departments need to come together, and we have to seize that opportunity to ensure that that affirmative action happens. Unless we create opportunities, it is not all that easy, particularly when we have people who are graduates, postgraduates, aspiring and wanting to do service to the nation. We need to grab that opportunity to ensure that affirmative action policies are put in place, particularly in the space of horizontal reservations in the public sector. Now, I'm very glad that the Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud, has come up with a sensitization module. Not just Justice Chandrachud, but the top judges of the Supreme Court have come up with a sensitization module for the judiciary on LGBTIQ, which also covers transgender persons, transgender women. If judges can be sensitized, I think courtrooms can end up, I'm not saying that they always are, can end up being, we've had judgments which sometimes leave a lot to be desired. So these are great ways in which we bridge those gaps. And if courtrooms can get sensitized, I think every sphere of public life, be it the private sector or the public sector or the PPPs, public-private partnerships, too can get sensitized. What are we doing as transgender persons? We are trying to be lawyers. We are trying to be RTI activists. We are trying to be teachers. We are trying to be IT professionals. We have quite a few. I mean, not many. We're nowhere compared to women in the women's rights movement. We are way, way behind, say about 70, 80 years behind. But we are trying to find our place as IT professionals, as some of us are chartered accountants. Very few, very, very few and far between. I think that creme de la creme of transgender persons who are employed in the private sector or the public sector would not even be a 3-digit figure in Telangana. It won't be a 3-digit figure. But again, this is a great opportunity to ensure that it's not just a 3-digit figure, but a 4, 5, 6-digit figure. So with all of this, I think I want to stress upon the last bit of G20, which is Swabhiman. It's a great, through G20, it's a great forum for us to also include transgender persons in the public sector, in the private sector, in public-private partnerships, even in organized and disorganized sector, and to have it more and more organized. We definitely, Memo, हम सब आशा करते हैं, उम्मीद रखते हैं, and we definitely aspire to be sitting here in each of these places like Ma'am Badugula Sumati Garu and the Innovation Officer. I'm very hopeful that one of my Muboli daughters, who's now a lawyer, she's a lawyer and she's litigating in the Madras High Court, and she has her eyes set that she wants to in the next 10-15 years be Justice Kanmani Ray. And we tell her that our lives have evaporated, but we want to see you all there. We want to see you all as Justice Kanmani Ray. We want to see you all as so-and-so IPS, so-and-so IAS, so-and-so CEO, so-and-so CIO, and so on. So with these great thoughts, I thank you enormously for this opportunity. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your thoughts and your empowering words. Empowering rural women is key not only to the well-being of individuals, families, and communities, but also to the overall economic productivity, given women's large presence in the agricultural workforce worldwide. And for more on this, I would like to invite Srimati Narsamma, Manager, Sangam Community Radio, Zahirabad. She will be presented with a sapling by our program executive, Rasool Khatun. And Srimati Narsamma, she will be speaking on women-led rural development.
స్టేజిని అలంకరించిన పెద్దలందరికీ నమస్తే. మేము హైదరాబాద్కు 100 కిలోమీటర్ల దూరంలో ఉంటాము, జహీరాబాద్. నాది సంగం రేడియో. అయితే డెక్కన్ డెవలప్మెంట్ సొసైటీ అనే సంస్థ, స్వచ్ఛంద సంస్థ, అది ఒక 40 ఏండ్ల కింద అక్కడ పనిచేస్తున్నది. అంటే ఊరోళ్ళతోని, ఆడోళ్ళతోని, చిన్న కులాలు, పేదోళ్ళు ఇట్లాంటి వాళ్ళతోని పనిచేస్తున్నది. అయితే అప్పుడు ఆకలి, బట్టలు, తిండి, వాళ్ళ భూములు వాళ్ళకి తెలియనప్పుడు సంస్థ పనిచేస్తుండే. అట్లాంటి టైంలో మందితోని సంఘాలు పెట్టడము, మందితోని మాట్లాడడము, వాళ్ళ తిప్పళ్ళు తెలుసుకొనడము అట్లాంటిది. అప్పుడు యునెస్కో వాళ్ళు మాకు ఒక మీటింగ్ పెట్టిండ్రు అనమాట. శివార్లేని చదువు అనేది ఒక మీటింగ్ పెట్టిండ్రు. ఆ శివార్లేని చదువులా ఆడోళ్ళు మాట్లాడుతున్నప్పుడు వేరే వేరేటోళ్ళు అందరూ మీడియా వచ్చిందనమాట. అంటే టీవీలు తీసేటోళ్ళు వచ్చిండ్రు, రేడియోలు చేసేటోళ్ళు వచ్చిండ్రు అట్లా. అప్పుడు వీళ్ళు మేము ఎందుకు చేసుకోవద్దు, మాకు కూడా ఒక తెలివి జ్ఞానం ఉన్నది, మాకు మంచి పాటలు వస్తాయి, మాకు మంచి వ్యవసాయం తెలుసు, మా విత్తనాలను మేము కాపాడుకుంటున్నాము, మాకంటూ ఒక రేడియో కానీ వీడియో కానీ ఉంటే మాది మేము చేసుకుంటాం కదా అని అడిగినప్పుడు యునెస్కో వాళ్ళు సపోర్ట్ చేసిండ్రు. అయితే ఇప్పుడు అక్కడ రేడియో స్టేషన్ ఉన్నదన్నమాట, దాని పేరు సంగం రేడియో. దాంట్లో ఎక్కువ మట్టుకైతే ఆడోళ్ళు, చిన్న కులాలోళ్ళు, పేదోళ్ళు, ఆడోళ్ళు. దాంట్లో ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ అన్నీ ఊరోళ్ళతోనే చేస్తాము. ఏదో 1-2% డాక్టర్లు కానీ, లాయర్లు కానీ, ఇంజనీరింగ్లు కానీ అట్లాంటి వాళ్ళతోనే అప్పుడప్పుడు ఇంటర్వ్యూలు చేస్తుంటాము. కానీ మొత్తం ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ అన్నీ ఆడోళ్ళతో చేస్తాం. తిండి మీద, వ్యవసాయం మీద, పిల్లల చదువుల మీద, ఇంకా వాళ్ళ ఆరోగ్యం మీద అంటే ఎక్కువ మట్టుకైతే మేము చెట్ల మందుల మీద పనిచేస్తాం. కాబట్టి ఎట్లాంటి చెట్ల మందులు ఏమిటికి పనిచేస్తాయి అనేది, తిండి అలవాట్లు ఎట్లా మారిపోతున్నాయి, అంటే వాళ్ళు తిన్న తిండికి ఇప్పుడు తింటున్న తిండికి అలవాట్లు ఏం మారుతున్నాయి, వ్యవసాయంలో తేడాలు ఎట్లా వస్తున్నాయి, పర్యావరణం ఎట్లా ఖరాబ్ అవుతుంది, అంటే అప్పుడున్న కాలానికి ఇప్పుడున్న కాలంకు వాతావరణం, ఎండలు కానీ వానలు కానీ దాంట్లో మార్పులు ఎట్లా వచ్చినాయి, ప్లాస్టిక్ ఎంత వాడుతున్నాము, వెనకటికి మనం ఇళ్ళల్లో ఏమేమి వాడుతుంటిమి, అట్లాంటి వాటి మీద ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ తయారు చేస్తుంటాం అన్నమాట. అది రోజు రాత్రి 7 గంటల నుండి 9 గంటల దాకా ప్రసారం చేస్తాము. ఎందుకు ఆ టైం అనుకున్నామంటే ఊరోళ్ళందరూ చేన్ల కాడికి పోయి ఇంటికి వచ్చి వంట చేసుకుంటా పొయ్యి కాడ కూర్చుంటారు. కాబట్టి ఆ టైంలో అయితే ఇంటి మంది రేడియో వినొచ్చు అనే ఉద్దేశం కొద్దీ మేము రేడియో నడిపిస్తున్నాము. అయితే నేను చదివింది అయితే 10వ తరగతే, కాకపోతే రేడియో స్టేషన్ నడపగలుగుతున్నాము. అంటే ఏదైనా కూడా మనం ఒక పట్టుదల, ఏదైనా నేను చేస్తా సాధిస్తా అనే నమ్మకం ఉంటే మనం దేన్నైనా కూడా సాధిస్తాం. నేను చదవడానికి బయట స్కూళ్ళకి ఏం పోలేదు. అదే అక్కడనే ఒక ఎవరైతే చదువురాని పిల్లలు ఉంటారో, పిల్లల్ని ఎత్తుకునే పిల్లలు ఉంటారో అట్లాంటి వాళ్ళకి ఒక స్కూల్ ఉండే, ఆ స్కూల్లో 10వ తరగతి కంప్లీట్ చేసుకున్నా. ఇప్పుడు సంగం రేడియోలో ఏ పనైనా కూడా చేయగలుగుతా. ఎడిటింగ్ చేస్తా, స్టూడియో రికార్డింగ్ చేస్తా, ఫీల్డ్ రికార్డింగ్ చేస్తా, బ్రాడ్కాస్టింగ్ చేస్తా, అట్లా ప్రతి ప్రోగ్రాం కూడా నేను చేయగలుగుతున్నాను అన్నమాట. మేము ఇప్పుడు 14 ఏళ్ళు కంప్లీట్ అయ్యి 15వ సంవత్సరంకు పడుతున్నాము. బ్రాడ్కాస్టింగ్ స్టార్ట్ అయ్యి అంతకుముందు 10 ఏండ్లు నేరో కాస్టింగ్ చేసినాం అనమాట. అంటే క్యాసెట్ రికార్డ్ చేసుకొని ఊర్లలోకి పోయి ఆ గుంపుతోని కూర్చొని వాళ్ళకి ఆ ప్రోగ్రామ్ వినిపించి మళ్ళీ వాళ్ళ ఊర్లో ఎవరన్నా ఇట్లా ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ చేస్తారంటే వాళ్ళని రేడియో స్టేషన్కి పిలిచి వాళ్ళతోని ప్రోగ్రామ్స్లు చేసి అట్లా రేడియో స్టేషన్ను నడిపిస్తున్నాం అన్నమాట. అయితే ట్రైనింగ్ అనేది వీడు అంతగానం నాకు ఉండదు, కొంచెమే ట్రైనింగ్ అని రేడియో స్టేషన్ని నడుపుతున్నాం. మీకు అందరికీ ధన్యవాదాలు.
I would like to call Professor Sunita Rani to translate Srimati Narsama's speech.
Thank you. I consider it a privilege to translate Narsamma Gari's words. Very, very empowering, very inspiring. I think this is called real empowerment. Narsamma Garu was talking about the community radio, Sangam community radio, based in Zahirabad, 100 kilometers from Hyderabad. And with the help of Deccan Development Society, women in the village were meeting, discussing, and they were thoroughly talking about sharing their experiences, their concerns, and their future activities. And that is when UNESCO stepped in, and UNESCO offered help to formalize the discussions that they were having, particularly about the knowledge systems, the local knowledge systems, health, healthy diet, crops, children's health, their health, all these issues they were able to formalize, and that is how they started a community radio. That community radio was being narrowcasted, as she said, for 10 years before this, but for the past 14 years they have been broadcasting it and having programs from 7 to 9 p.m. every evening, and which is very, very practical in a rural setup because people come back from work. They are able to manage, handle, balance work as well as entertainment and knowledge as well. And this radio is focusing on the knowledge that they have and sharing of their knowledge. Something that is very, very important that Narsamma Garu was saying is that she studied up to 10th class and she is not formally trained. But she has been doing everything in the radio, starting from editing, broadcasting, interviewing people, meeting people, drawing people from different sources to have programs. And she also made one more very, very important point, that is, they do invite people from all fields, all walks of life, but they majorly have discussions among themselves. I think this really emphasizes the need for sharing and the need for support systems and the need to share. Once again, I may not have been able to capture the power in her words, but I think I have tried my best. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to take a moment particularly to thank a few people here, especially thank a few people by name. But before that, I also wanted to say that we have listened to diverse voices, diverse views, but all of them have a connecting point, that is empowerment of women, empowerment of people. I think day in and day out in women's studies, we do come across the feminist theories that tell us that talk about standpoint theories, standpoint research, where we look at the people from below, that is the marginalized comes first. That is where we begin our studies. So why we are focusing on empowerment of women or empowerment of trans women is not to say men and other identities do not exist, but we do believe in intersectionality and multiplicity of identities. And also it clearly came out like how we speak from our own respective locations, how we are all part of respective systems, and how our views, our expressions, our articulations, our affiliations, our dynamics actually are influenced by our own location. Sometimes rooting ourselves out of the location might be possible, but I think that location itself has to be turned into a location of empowerment, power, discourse. Like an African American feminist, Bell Hooks talks about it, marginality is a space for possibilities. It's possible to raise a discourse from there as well. And every time women's studies collaborates with people, with organizations, with systems, we look at it as an opportunity to intervene with our own ideas. And we look at it as an opportunity to bring in some change with that collaboration. So in this context, particularly I wanted to thank Nihara from Akashvani. I have to make it clear here because I think I have troubled her a lot, time and again saying that this is our ideology, this is our principle, this is our limit. I think I have troubled her enough. So I particularly would like to thank her and would like to thank my colleagues at the center, our students who have played a major role, our alumni who are here, some of them are here. And talking about women power, I have to thank my office person, both of them, but particularly Hemlata here. I think she stepped out, who really helped us in all this. Okay, thank you so much.
We'll quickly break for some snacks, but we do have a lot more lined up. We have a very special cultural performance after that. And all the guests can proceed towards.
Formal vote of thanks now. Some of the guests might be leaving.
Okay, so before we, go and have snacks, I would like to call Nihara, and she will be giving the vote of thanks.
Ayam nijaha paroveti ganana laguchetasam udaracharitanantu vasudaiva kutumbakam. The theme of G20 this year, One Earth, One Family and One Future, can be realized with inclusiveness, holistic and sustainable development. That is what we heard from our speakers today in different ways. Like Sir mentioned, there is a diversity of speakers, diversity of topics today, but all comes, sums up to this. It's inclusiveness, holistic and sustainable development. In the land where women like Akka Mahadevi, Mahalakha Bai, Bangalore, Nagaratnamma and all were born, today we have seen a long way with respect to women empowerment, development, women inclusiveness, women voicing out their thoughts, women voicing out their desires, coming out and being part of each and every part of the community. Like Sir also mentioned yesterday in Chandrayaan-3 mission, there were so many women scientists. We have come a long way through, but there is still a long road ahead with respect to women empowerment. And the Empower 20 group under the chairmanship of Ms. Sangeeta Reddy gravitated the focus from women empowerment to women-led empowerment and women-led development this year. In this symposium, under guidance of our program head, Shri Uday Shankar Garu, and head of Center for Women's Studies, Professor K. Sunita Rani, we have attempted to put together the focus areas of Empower 20 group in its true spirit by our most distinguished speakers. It is indeed a great pleasure and privilege for Akashvani Hyderabad to organize the symposium here in association with University of Hyderabad Center for Women's Studies. I, on behalf of Akashvani Hyderabad, take this opportunity to convey my profuse thanks to Professor B.J. Rao Garu, Vice Chancellor of University of Hyderabad, Professor Jyotirmaya Sarma Garu, the Dean School of Social Sciences. My heartfelt thanks to Head of Center for Women's Studies, Professor Sunita Rani Garu, and her team for making this collaboration possible. I also thank you, ma'am, for the timely guidance and support you extended in organizing this symposium. My profound gratitude to all our distinguished speakers, Badugula Sumati Garu, Dr. Shanta Tautam Garu, Ms. Ekta Bail, Ms. Vaijayanti Vasanta Mogili, Ms. Narasamma Garu, for taking time out to be part of this program and sharing their insightful thoughts with us. My sincere gratitude to Mr. Peri Tyagaraja Garu, who is about to perform. You're about to witness this wonderful musical performance. It's a fusion music concert. I'm sure you all will be spellbound by his team's performance. And also, my pleasure to share my best regards and best wishes to the student community and respectful gratitude to all the distinguished guests who are also off the dais. In fact, it is you who gave perfection to this symposium. All our listeners who've been listening to us on 101.9 FM, Akashvani Hyderabad, and also who are virtually part of this program through our YouTube channel. I extend my gratitude to our program head, Shri Uday Shankar Garu, not only for giving me the opportunity to conduct this symposium, but also for giving me a free hand in executing this program. I sincerely extend thanks to all my colleagues, particularly KL Srinivas Reddy Garu, Sita Sailaja Garu, Konatam Srihari Garu, and all other staff for their tangible and intangible support. I also thank School of Life Sciences for being extremely welcoming and shouldering the responsibilities in everything, in arranging the program, pre-preparation for the program, and making this program a grand success in a very intimate and nice atmosphere. Our dear guests and listeners, I firmly believe as we walk out of this place, we and our listeners of Akashvani Hyderabad will unfold the essence of the symposium to the world tomorrow and become torch bearers for women-led empowerment. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Women empowering women. Every woman's success should be an inspiration to another. And our history shows that there have been so many. So let's give them a tribute that they deserve. Akka Mahadevi. She was a remarkable 12th century Indian saint, poetess, and philosopher who belonged to the Bhakti movement, a spiritual and literary movement that emphasized devotion to a personal deity. She was born in Karnataka and is considered one of the most prominent and influential women saints of the movement. Akka Mahadevi's poetry, known as Vachana literature, is deeply spiritual and focuses on her intense devotion to Lord Shiva. Her verses are characterized by their simplicity and directness, often expressing her longing for a union with the divine and her detachment from worldly attachments. She is known for her strong rejection of societal norms and her unconventional lifestyle, including her decision to renounce traditional roles and embrace a life of asceticism. Akka Mahadevi's life and poetry have made her an icon of spiritual independence, self-realization, and the pursuit of divine love outside the boundaries of societal expectations. Her legacy continues to inspire people and serves as a testament to the power of devotion and individual expression. Ma Lakhabai. She was a prominent Urdu poet and a courtesan of the 18th century. She used her literary talents to challenge societal norms and express her thoughts and emotions. In a time when women's voices were often suppressed, she dared to create poetry that celebrated love, desire, and intellect. Her poetry might have been seen as a rebellion against the constraints placed on women's expression and agency, but through her work, she may have advocated for women's autonomy and the right to pursue their passions. Bangalore Nagaratnamma. She was a known Carnatic music singer and scholar, could have been viewed as a woman who defied gender norms and made significant contributions in her field. She might be seen as challenging the notion that women should be confined to domestic roles by excelling in a traditionally male-dominated sphere. Her dedication to preserving and promoting Indian classical music might be seen as a form of empowerment, breaking down barriers for women in arts. Additionally, her efforts to research and document history of music, particularly the Devdasi tradition, could be seen as shedding light on the often marginalized stories of women in the past. And Atukuri Molla was a Telugu poetess and prominent figure in the Telugu literature. She lived during the 15th century and is known for her compositions that primarily focus on issues and personal emotions. Her works often revolve around the themes of love, devotion, and challenges faced by women in the society. Molla's famous work, rather her most famous work, is Mulla Ramayanam, which is a poetic adaptation of the Hindu epic Ramayana from Sita's perspective. And there are so many more women who have, over the years, worked towards inspiring and empowering other women. Setting examples of what can be done, what can be achieved, let's give them a fitting tribute, a musical tribute that is being performed by Shri Peri Thiagaraju Garu and his team.
Hello. It's a wonderful performance by Per Tyagaraja Garu and his team.
It is a spectacular performance. Can we have another round of applause, please?
And thank you, Uday Shankar Garu, for this opportunity. We are very glad to be here. So I want to introduce my artist and on flutist, Pramod Kumar. He's one of the top artists in Hyderabad. And most senior bassist, Benjamin. And wonderful drummer, Balram Garu. And on keys, keyboard by Ganesh. And he's a doctor. He's a like multi-artist. And Dr. Srikanth Garu. Thank you so much.
Can everybody please stand for the national anthem?
Janagana. We'll start it. Janagana mana adhinayaka jaya he Bharata bhagya vidhata Punjab Sindhu Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkalavanga Vindhya Himachala Yamuna Ganga Uttala Jalaghitaranga तव शुभ नामे जाहे तव शुभ आशीष माहे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे जय हिंद.
With this, we conclude our symposium for today. Thank you so much for joining us.